Hey guys, welcome back to my channel. In this tutorial, I am going to touch on all of the basics of JavaScript in just 8 minutes. So first of all, in order to create a variable in JavaScript, you just type let and then the name of the variable. It could be name and then it equals to anything like John, for example. If I want to create a constant, and a constant is something that you will never change throughout your application, it could be you just type const and then the name of that constant. It could be website and equals to www.google.com. This is a constant which will never be changed and you cannot change it later. If you want to create an integer, you just type let and then the name of the integer. A variable, it's just a normal variable. It doesn't matter if it's a string or an integer or a double or a number with a decimal value. You just type the name of that variable. It could be x equals to 2.3 or just 2. So this is an integer and this is a string. You want to print something on the console, you just type console and then log, and you just pass the parameter or the value that you want it to be printed out. So for example, I want to print out this website. I just pass website, and there you go. We have google.com. And another important concept in JavaScript is the if statement. If for example I have two variables, the first one is x and the other one is y equals to 4, and I want to check which one is larger, I would just type if, and then inside parentheses I would just type if x is greater than y, or if y is greater than x, I would just for example I would just print out the value. I would just type, say, y is greater than x, and I could also have an else statement, else, and if x is greater, I would just copy this statement and change x by y. So here this is gonna be x and this is y. Now if I save and run our program, as you can see it says y is greater than x because that is true. 4 is greater than 2. This is how you create if statements in JavaScript. You can also add else if you want here. For example, I could say else if, and then inside those curly braces I would type the statement that I wanted to happen. Another important concept is for loops, but before we get to for loops, let's first create arrays. So in order to create an array in JavaScript, you just type let and then the name of the array, for example array, and it's going to be equal to just random numbers, 12, 13, 44, 66, and 2. And this is how you can create arrays in JavaScript. If you want to access a specific element of an array, you just type array and then the index of that array, which, for example, which starts, by the way, by 0. So 0 is points to 12, and 1 points to 13, and so on and so forth. So for example, if I want to access the second element of this array, I would just type 1. And I can, of course, print it out using the console.log, and I pass this inside it and save and run. And as you can see, I get 13. And if I want to check the length of an array, how many elements inside an array, I just call a method called length. So I just type array and then dot length, length, and save and run, and it says 5, and that is true because we have here 5 elements inside this array. Now let's get to another concept, which is for loop. And for loop is just a loop that is going to loop through a specific array and do something while looping through an array. So to create a loop in JavaScript, you just type for, and then the counter, which could be let I equals to 0, and then as long as this I is smaller than the array length, what we want to do is we want to increase that I, and as long as that I is smaller than the array length, we should do something inside it. And once I exceeds that number, we are going to get out of that loop. And for example, what we want to do inside this loop is just print out these numbers of this array, or elements of this array. So I'm going to type console.log, and then I'm going to pass array, and then the index is going to be 0 because it's going to start by 0, and then it's going to be increased to 1, and then 2, and then 3, and then 4, and once it exceeds that the array length, which is 5, it's going to get out of that loop. Let's save and run, and as you can see, it has printed out all these numbers of this array. Let me just delete this and run again. Comment this out. I'm gonna save and run, and as you can see, it printed out all of these elements: 12, 13, 44, 66, and 2. And another important concept, which is while loop, and while loop is exactly the same as for loop, but the difference is that we create the counter by ourselves outside of the loop. So I'm gonna show you how we can create a while loop. You just type while instead of for, while, and outside, before we create this loop, I'm going to create the counter, which can be a let, and then counter equals to 0, and inside these parentheses I'm going to type counter and then smaller than array dot length. What that means is that it means that as long as this counter is smaller than the array length, we want to perform what is inside, we want to implement what is inside this loop. And once the counter exceeds that number, we are going to get out of this loop. And of course here we need to increase that counter by using counter and then plus plus. And I'm going to save and run. And of course here we need to change the I by the counter, and I'm going to save and run, and as you can see, we get the same exact result as we did before with the for loop. So they are the same, but the difference is that we create the counter outside the loop and then we increase it inside the loop. Now let's move on to a very important concept in JavaScript, which is objects. And to create an object in JavaScript, you just are going to type the name of the object. So for example, I want an object of let person, and then equals, and then curly braces, and inside these curly braces I can type the properties of that person. So a person might have a name, and then colon, and then I'm gonna type the name of that person, which is John, and then a comma, and then age, and then colon, and then 25 or 29, and then comma, and then something like job or gender, male, and etc. etc. And we can of course print that object on the screen using the console again, console.log, and I'm going to pass the person here to this function, and I'm going to save and run, and as you can see, I get this object printed out on my screen. And in order to access a specific property of an object, you just use a dot notation by using dot and then you type that property, which is name. For example, if I want to get the name, and by the way, this is called a call when you type the object and then dot and then the name of the property or a function. It is called a call to that property. If I save and run, I get John on the screen. Another very important concept and essential in JavaScript is functions. And functions are just a bunch of code that is going to perform a specific task and then get the result back to me. So let's quickly create a function. To create a function in JavaScript, you just type function, and then the name of the function. It could be add one, and what it's gonna do, it's gonna add 1 to the number that we are gonna pass it. So for example, I want to pass a variable called number, and inside it I'm gonna just add 1 to that number. So I'm gonna use result. I'm gonna create a new variable called let, and then result equals to number plus 1, and I'm gonna return that result. And of course, this is just an example. A function could be much more meaningful than that. And in order to call a function in JavaScript, you just type the name of that function and you pass a parameter if there is any parameter that you want to pass. I am going to pass 10, and it's going to increase it for me from 10 to 11 and return that value to me back again. And of course, that is not enough. It's not going to print this on the screen. So outside this function, after the call, I'm going to just use the console again, console.log, and I'm going to pass. I'm going to either pass this function, or I can store the result here back again in another variable called anything like variable or result res equals to this, and I'm going to pass this res inside the log, and if I save and run, I get 11. And that's it for this tutorial. I have many other tutorials in for JavaScript and other programming languages. You can check my channel, and also I have created a free ebook on how to make money coding. If you want to download that book, it's totally free. You can download it right now. And also don't forget to share, like, and subscribe. And thanks for watching. I'll see you later.